The Roz and Mocha Show. KiSS 92.5.
Check. Helen Fielding, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You must be so excited because it's been 15 years since we last saw Bridget Jones, and she's back now, and you don't have to hide anything or any secrets. It's out there, and it's selling better than some books have for years.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And I think people were pretty good about keeping the plot quiet. We didn't do a great big embargo thing. We just said, please try not to get drunk and leave it in a taxi.
Now, why did it take so long for this book to come out?
I think I kind of lost my voice a bit after the first two. And also, there was a choice. I could either keep churning them out, and there was pressure to do that. But I actually care about Bridget quite a lot. So I didn't want to just carry on parodying myself. So I waited until I had a story that I wanted to tell. And then I did it without telling anyone. I think if I'd known so many people were going to read the first Bridget, I would never have dared put the things that I did put in it. And so this time it was a bit the same. No one knew I was writing it. I could have chucked it away if I didn't want to publish it. So, yeah, it felt very free and fun.
Now, since it's been 15 years since we last saw Bridget, how old would she be now? Like 60, 7? Like, how old would she be now? And does she do old lady things?
I beg your pardon, I was a child when I wrote the first one. But no, actually, I never said her age the first time, and this time I was thinking, shall I keep it vague? And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to put that she is 51, because I think there's a really outdated image of the older woman. You know, like you just said, does she do old lady things? What are old lady things? Because as far as I can see, the women around me are doing exactly the same as they've been doing the whole time, which is sort of, you know, if they're single, dating, having sex, going out with their friends, having a drink, laughing, worrying about things, supporting each other, wearing the same sorts of clothes, and the big knickers and all that stuff. And I think it's, you know, the image of the woman of a certain age needs just as much of a rebrand as the spinster did back when Bridget was thinking she was going to die alone and be eaten by a dog.
So it's not like we're seeing Bridget Jones playing Mahjong.
No, and she's not sitting in a shawl staring morbidly out of the window, knitting. No, she's still the same person.
Would you say Bridget Jones is more of a sex symbol or feminist icon?
Well, you know, it was first a column in the Independent newspaper. And I think when Bridget Jones had been running as a column for, I don't know, 6 weeks, we started getting letters. And we got a letter to the editor, very formal. Dear sir, I would quite like to shag Bridget Jones. Could you let me have her phone number, please? Many thanks. Yours faithfully. But I think that might have been more to do with the photograph at the top of the column than the actual column, because it was of a very pretty secretary on the paper in a sort of semi-see-through blouse. And, you know, this time there's quite a sexy woman on the cover of the book, but she is 56, and she's sitting there in a slip.
So when we found out it was Renee Zellweger, did the same guy write you again asking the same thing?
I think he probably wrote to Renee Zellweger.
Now, will we see a movie for this one? And who, like, is it going to be the same people playing the same roles? Like, are we looking at a screenplay?
Well, there hasn't been time to really get into that, because with publishing moving so quickly these days, I only recently finished the book. But Mark Darcy does continue, his memory continues, shining intact and gentlemanly throughout the book. And Daniel Cleaver's still in there as the naughty godfather. But then we've got two new love interests. We've got the younger man who allows Bridget to rediscover herself as a woman. And then we have Mr. Wallaker, who's the sort of Mr. Darcy, Captain Von Trapp, Jane Austen hero type, who's rather Bond-like in the end. So there is the potential for a perfect storm of really hot men.
Oh.
And I would certainly like to be at the casting session, is all I can say.
Now, you got a lot of hate for killing off Darcy. I remember when this thing broke, like, it was trending worldwide. And I read that some guy, like, yelled at you or was, like, accusing you of murder. Like, the people take this seriously. You killed a guy.
I did go to a local restaurant, and a man came out and said, "You've murdered Colin Firth." But he was really drunk, and I said, "I think you've got a little bit confused. Colin Firth is still alive." But no, it was on the BBC News. It was the Syrian crisis, and then Mark Darcy is dead. I was startled by the scale of the reaction because nobody has died. But I think actually it's really touching that someone who's a fictional character should mean so much to people. But actually it wasn't really me who created that character. It was first Jane Austen with Mr. Darcy, then Colin Firth playing Mr. Darcy, then me making Mark Darcy, who was made up of Colin Firth playing Mr. Darcy and Mr. Darcy in the first place. And then this all turned into the movie version of Mark Darcy, who was really a hybrid of all three or four. So it's grown over time. But I think the nice thing about it is that here was a man who's gorgeous and gentlemanly and a sort of, desirable chap who finds a girl who's just a normal girl trying and failing to be perfect and just muddling through life like everybody does. And he says to her, I love you just as you are. And I think that's why people care about Mark. And I would never have had him leave Bridget. So it's far better that his memory is left intact as a perfect gentleman.
How did you break the news to Colin Firth that he's pretty much dead?
I was quite nervous, but I wanted him to hear it from me first, as with any death of someone close.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell him in person, but we couldn't manage to be in the same place at the same time. So in the end, I had to call him and make sure he was sitting down. He had someone with him. And it was a very multi-layered conversation.
Yeah.
He's a very intelligent and funny and gorgeous man. And so we both appreciated that we were both upset and shocked, but at the same time, no one has died. And so we were laughing and crying.
Helen, I want to ask you this because my mind, has crazy images sometimes.
Your mind has got a helmet and a camera saying KiSS 92.5 on it.
As I said, I'm crazy. I always imagined, like in London, all you writers get together in some secret dwelling of some sort and sort of pass each other ideas. So tell me if it's like, do you get together and drink with J.K. Rowling and go, okay, I have an idea for you and she has an idea for you. Is this true or is it just crazy?
Well, J.K. Rowling very sensibly lives tucked away in Scotland. I'm a huge fan of hers. No, I think there is the thing about London is everything's in one city. Literature, telly, movies, politics, it's all theatre, it's all there. So, and it's kind of, you don't need to drive in London, so there's quite a lot of drinking going on. So there is quite a jolly bunch of writers. And I think the funny thing is it's whose story is it? Because everyone has funny stories.
Of course.
Like, I remember one of my friends saying to me, I was talking about the fear of, if you're on your own with children, the fear of dying. And then my friend Tracy said to me, well, it's better worrying about dying and being eaten by your children than dying alone and being eaten by a dog in your 30s. And the question is, whose story is it? There's all sorts of stories people have told me, and I had a story about when I had my daughter by C-section. I prepared this email to announce the birth, and I knew when she was going to be born, what she was going to be called, but I accidentally pressed send all, so told everyone I'd had a baby, but then had to send another email saying, I'm really sorry, I haven't actually had the baby, I just pressed the email too soon. And then they were all going, who does that? And then when I did have her, I couldn't very well then say, actually, I have had the baby now. I just felt stupid.
The mom
by
that cried baby.
Yes. But so stories like that, I have to say, well, don't use that. That's a story. And then people give me a story, and I'll say, well, can I use your story? Like, there's a friend who does a lot of internet dating. She bumped into her ex on a website on Plenty of Fish. He ranted at her and then blocked her. She made up a girl to get back at him, flirted with him, got the girl to stand the ex up. Then the next day, the ex put up a message saying he was no longer available and he'd met someone else. And then my friend was really upset because the ex had met someone else. But I was saying, but this girl that you made up wasn't real, and he's just saying he's met someone else to get back at the imaginary girl that you made up to get back at him, which was kind of complicated.
But these are all great stories. I'm thinking book.
Yeah, that's in the book. But because girls tell me stories almost it's almost like a confession. And I feel like they need some sort of absolution, like saying, bless you, my child. You are human. You are Bridget Jones. It's okay to have bad things happen. But I always ask before I use a story and give them an acknowledgement at the end.
Last question for you. I want to find out, looking, the third book just came out. We're all very excited. Do you ever sort of look back or over a breakfast say, you know, I wish I wrote this differently, or I wish I did this differently? Do you ever any mental wishings of change?
Well, I'm a terrible, terrible rewriter. The books have to be snatched from my hands, or I'll just carry on rewriting forever. But once they're gone, they're gone. It's sort of like once you set off on the aeroplane, you know, you can't think, oh, have I got my passport and things anymore. You just have to say, there it goes, and let it go out. Like a balloon or something. Well, maybe not a balloon, but something.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much. An absolute honor meeting you, and congratulations on the third book.
Thank you. Nice meeting you too, and I love your hat.
Perfect.
The Roz and Mocha Show. KiSS 92.5.